Welcome to the Genesis Science Report. I'm David Rives, and we're thrilled to have you with us this evening. Join us as we navigate recent breakthroughs in paleontology with the help of experts like Dr. Werner and John Mackay. We'll examine how recent discoveries enhance our understanding of the fossil record and its connection to Scripture. But first, you've heard me previously discuss many of the evils of the eugenics movement of the 19th and 20th centuries on the Genesis Science Report. To summarize, eugenics was an idea of selective breeding of humans, sometimes called scientific racism. It was originally proposed by Charles Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton. He said, "What nature does blindly, slowly, and ruthlessly, man may do providently, quickly, and kindly." In other words, man can simply take the wheel of natural selection and weed out the useless parts of humanity and stop them from reproducing. But where did that lead? Well, this led to forced sterilization, racism, and many of the policies of Nazi Germany, including the final solution and the ongoing scourge of abortion. Now, these ideas spread like a mind virus in the thoughts of elites throughout the Western world. But these ideas, firmly rooted in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, rejected the biblical foundations that are found in the book of Genesis. The Bible gives no such permission to society to sterilize the population. In fact, the first mandate in the book of Genesis is exactly the opposite. Mankind was told to be fruitful, to multiply on several occasions. Adam and Eve are given this first mandate in the garden, and then Noah is yet again told, be fruitful, multiply after the flood. Well, the program of forced sterilization was in direct contradiction to the Word of God. It also ran counter to the doctrine that we have been created in God's image, which gives us the conviction that all human life is sacred. But let me be pointed. I suggest that the eugenics movement never died. That's right. This is part 2 of our discussion on eugenics. It seems that eugenics magically disappeared after the fall of Hitler's Germany, but that was only the most blatant form of eugenics that gave credence to the blasphemous perspective on human life. But let me suggest that the ideas of the eugenics movement are alive and well, and that it has actually gotten more traction now than at any time in history. Now, sure, it's evolved, if we could say that, but it's continuing to do damage the world over. And remember, this is simply the practical outworking of the theory of evolution in society today. I think I need to restate, Galton was Charles Darwin's cousin. These thoughts grew and germinated together, and their rotten fruit is from the same philosophical tree. The first way it lives on is in the legacy of Margaret Sanger, one of the foremost voices of the eugenics movement. She founded Planned Parenthood. Sanger said all sorts of disturbing things like, "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." What? She favored the forced sterilization of those that she deemed unfit, and she actually gave a speech to the Ku Klux Klan, once writing, "The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it." This woman's ideas have led to over 65 million supposed legal abortions or murders in the United States since 1973. And you have to ask yourself, is it a coincidence that many of Planned Parenthood's so-called clinics are in racial minority neighborhoods? But how else is this dream of sterilization being brought to life? Oh no, we're about to get politically incorrect. Enter the transgender hysteria of the 21st century. Now, it's not going to take long for those in the future to see how our mental current situation is actually changing society. It's actually degrading society as we know it. I'll have to state that the similarities to the eugenics movement that we're seeing today are truly startling. But in fact, there are even more disturbing elements of the current situation. Instead of forced sterilization, there's a social contagion that's being forced upon the minds of young people through curriculum, through social media, and through film. Truly, a psychological operation is being experimentally used against defenseless youth, encouraging them to question the most basic functions of their own biology. Young children are being brainwashed to think that, oh, I haven't been born in the right body. Well, even 10 years ago, this plague of lies would be relegated to the trash heap of bad science fiction, or more accurately, horror novels. But what are the results of this hysteria? Multitudes are being rendered unable to reproduce. They're actually being sterilized. Does that sound familiar? Has it ever occurred to you that the outcome is extraordinarily similar to the eugenics program? I mean, could this be eugenics' evil stepchild going on in society today? The result is social hysteria, which leads to irreversibly physically damaged children and young people. And those that undergo these surgeries, they won't be able to have their own children. Eugenics by another name. What a shame. Let me sum it up. Jesus himself spoke on this issue when he said, God created humankind, male and female, in the beginning. God knew what he was doing when he made each person. But these agenda-charged programs defy God's image and mock God's designs for males and females. Hold fast to the unchanging bedrock of the Word of God, because no matter what is thrown at us next, we will always be rooted and grounded in truth. So whether it's the value of life, whether it's fighting against pseudo-scientific racism, or bringing to light biological inconsistencies, we will commit to stand on ultimate truth. We will fight for the value of every person, because Jesus came to set each person free. Now it's time for us to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back to answer a question about how certain animals manage to migrate and settle on different continents following the events of the Great Flood, next on Genesis Science Report. Can you do me a favor? Tell your friends and your neighbors about GSN. Remember, it airs 24/7 and is completely free to watch. We're available on Roku, Fire TV, online, and on mobile devices and tablets. Just give them the website address, GenesisScienceNetwork.com. Spread the word, share the truth. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
Join us at the Wonder Center and Science Museum for this month's Unwrapped event, where we feature expert speakers presenting scientific and biblical discoveries.
It pays to learn history, folks.
We cannot create an aircraft even close to what these birds can do.
This changes the way we do biology.
Discounted tickets are available for an after-hours adventure, including museum admission with kids' hands-on activities, a planetarium movie, Tesla experience, and pre-show entertainment. Perfect for the whole family.
What you believe about the history of the world is going to affect the way that you study the world today.
You see a mathematical order here. You see the orthogonal lines. You see the repeating patterns.
You don't understand what it takes to make a cell. That's serious engineering.
Come be inspired as you learn. The evening presentation is free, but seating is extremely limited, so RSVP immediately at wondercenter.org.
Today we can just pick up our cell phone and call somebody across the world. Long before this, there were long-distance communications that have happened throughout history.
And you could see dozens of ships coming in that don't belong there. Light up that fire so that that can be seen miles away. If you're going to be defending against attackers, it's got to be able to pass the warning in a short amount of time.
On Wonders Without Number. Tune in to the Genesis Science Network Knowledge Block as you learn real, cutting-edge science, not evolutionary theories and agendas. Whether you're in junior or senior high, a homeschooler, or an adult looking for higher education, we bring you a fresh perspective each weekday. Our goal is to equip you with another block to build and strengthen your faith, giving you solid evidence. Join us each weekday at 11 a.m. Central. Welcome back. It is time for our Q&A segment where we answer questions sent in from our viewers. This week, we're addressing an interesting one from Ben Halverson on TikTok. Ben asks, how did animals like koalas, penguins, and kangaroos make it all the way to Australia or Antarctica from where the Ark landed? Thank you for your question, Ben. Ben, we have to remember that the conditions after the flood were vastly different because of the plate tectonics that were going on, or because of the tremendous amount of volcanism that was going on. You had a lot of volcanic aerosols in the upper atmosphere. Those volcanic aerosols in the upper atmosphere are basically reflecting back the light from the sun before it can penetrate down to Earth. This started, now this is theoretical, but it makes a lot of sense based on what we've studied within the scientific community, that it would have started a cooling cycle. And yes, there have been cooler portions of Earth's history. Many people call them ice ages, where basically the ice caps on the northern and southern poles would have started to move inwards. Well, as those ice caps grew, it would have dropped the levels of the oceans, revealing natural land bridges that already connect almost every continent together. If you drop the ocean levels just a bit, you can actually have these natural ways that animals can reach other continents, other areas of the Earth after they would have dispersed getting off of the Ark. They're doing what they're supposed to do, being fruitful, multiplying, and replenishing the entire Earth, right? So this would explain how those animals would have been able to make it over to those continents. And then what they realized is that, hey, I'm fulfilling an ecological niche. This environment is really good for me. Maybe the environment back in Africa or back in Europe or wherever it might be is not as healthy for me. So the populations of those types of animals went extinct in those areas, but they began to thrive in the other places, let's say Australia. Now, there are a few little considerations. We have to remember that animals might have hopped on floating log mats. They may have been stuck on these floating logs after the flood as the floodwaters are receding, and those logs may have brought them to other areas. And you know, I'm not even so concerned about it when it comes to Australia, because the kangaroos, they could have just hopped over. We love connecting with our thoughtful viewers like you, so remember to keep those questions coming. Reach out to us on social media. You can follow us at David Rives Ministries on Facebook and Instagram and others. Be sure to send us an email at comments@genesissciencenetwork.com. We'll try to answer that on our next programs. Now, if you want to learn more about how the flood shaped our planet, I want you to check out this week's featured resource. That's right, Flood by Design. Receding water shapes the Earth's surface. This is by a friend, Mike Ord, and Mike explores what geologists call the retreating stages of the flood, the 7-month period where the waters receded, carving out a lot of the landscapes that we see. Ord examines evidence that mainstream geology struggles to explain, like unusual rock dispersals over hundreds of miles, the rapid carving of mountains and valleys, the formation of ocean basins and continents, and so much more. It's filled with photographs, it's got illustrations, easy to understand charts. Flood by Design is an excellent resource for high school students and adults alike. It offers a powerful, biblically based theory on how our world's geography actually came to be. Now, you can find Flood by Design at the Creation Superstore by visiting creationsuperstore.com, or you can call 931-212-7990. Pick up your copy today. Now, it's time for the Kids Corner. Do you have a sample of pyrite in your rock collection? Now, I started collecting rocks and fossils when I was about 8 years old. This is an actual piece of pyrite, or fool's gold, from my childhood collection. Pyrite used to fool explorers. They saw something shiny and they believed, hey, I found gold, but it's actually much different from gold. That's why it's often simply called fool's gold. Pyrite is much harder and brittle when compared to real gold. When you actually strike a piece of pyrite with a hammer, a shower of sparks will be produced. It might even shatter the piece of pyrite. Now, a sample of gold, when it's hammered, it actually absorbs the blow. It dents, it flattens out after repeated strikes. Now, While gold is scarce and valuable, pyrite is fun and beautiful, but is usually not of great value. It's found around the world in numerous types of formations. But despite being commonly found, it's always been a popular and colorful addition to any rock collection. It's one of my favorite pieces from my childhood collection. Now, pyrite is often found as small flecks or in masses with indistinct crystal shapes, but sometimes you find defined crystal shapes, either as individual crystals or as in groupings of crystals. Most crystals of this type tend to be rather small, but larger single or groups of crystals, usually found in cube shapes like this one right here, are the least often found, and they have the greatest value to collectors. You can see how shiny that is. Now, some of these larger crystals are sometimes found with other crystals intersecting, as if they're actually growing out of them. I don't know if we can pick that up on camera, but some individual large cubes can measure 2 or more inches across, and despite their nearly perfect symmetrical cube shape, these are actually entirely natural formations. This is the way they grow. These amazing crystals are a reminder to us that our God is a God that has created wonders all around us that reflect order, design, and beauty that we can enjoy and appreciate. Let's remember to give Him the glory for it. You know, of all the living beings that God created, we alone are made in the image of God with the ability to recognize the wonders without number of His creation. All right, up next, we will have Dr. Carl Werner back on the show to discuss reports of modern-looking ants found alongside dinosaur fossils. You won't want to miss it, so stick around. Friends of Genesis Science Network, we started this channel to make an impact in the lives of both Christians and inquiring skeptics around the world. It has done that in unbelievable ways. Now, one of our viewers wrote, "I've been watching your channel for nearly a week now, and I would like you to know the blessing that it's been to me. I've never had the finances or the opportunity to attend a university, but I've been a believer for the last 37 years. Your channel has done more for my understanding of my faith than any book I've read save the Bible, and I feel like I'm finally able to attend the lecture classes I've always wanted to. Thank you so much for your ministry." I want to thank you for your generous support. GSN is no simple project and requires monthly commitments to keep it on the air. Please consider becoming a partner with us today. Just call 931-212-7990 or click Give on our website. We are making a difference. I'm David Rives, and you're watching the Genesis Science Network. The work of His hands. Let's look at photography of the Earth from space with a NASA astronaut.
We orbit the Earth 16 times a day. My cumulative time in space is 534 days, so I'll let you do the math.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
what the message we hear, there's absolutely no conflict between science and Scripture.
Absolutely. On wonders without number. For over a century, the fossil record has been upheld as the cornerstone of evolutionary theory, a chronicle of life on Earth slowly transforming over millions of years. But a growing body of evidence suggests that this widely accepted narrative is deeply flawed. I mean, just last year, Japanese scientists reported finding fossilized ants in amber dating back over 100 million years, supposedly, that possess the exact same intricate sensory structures as modern ants. Now, this new research adds to a larger pattern of living fossils, ancient plant and animal remains that appear virtually unchanged from modern species, yet are found alongside the fossils of dinosaurs and other extinct creatures. One scientist at the forefront of documenting these remarkable discoveries is Dr. Carl Werner, a paleontologist and author of several books on evolution and living fossils. Dr. Werner, it's great to have you on the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you, David. Thank you.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being back on. Your expertise in living fossils is very, very much appreciated. I wanted to start by asking, is it really a surprise for us to find modern appearing ants fossilized next to dinosaurs? And how do these discoveries actually fit into your perspective when you look at the fossil record?
Well, David, finding modern animals in the dinosaur rock layers is expected for the creation model of origins. The theory of creation states that at the beginning, God made all of the animal and plant types that have ever lived on the earth, such as humans and dinosaurs and ants and pterodactyls and ducks. Later, during the worldwide flood of Noah, these animals were buried in the sedimentary rock layers and became fossils. Accordingly, creationism predicts that modern appearing animals and plants, such as ants and ducks and oak trees and sassafras trees, will be found fossilized alongside dinosaurs and pterodactyls, and that is exactly what we find.
Absolutely. We're finding these things all over the world, and we actually have a display case at the Wonder Center and Science Museum. 3 full-size all-glass display cases. They are absolutely chock full of these supposed living fossils, including things like, pine cones next to fossilized pine cones, horseshoe crabs next to fossilized horseshoe crabs, and Priscacara, right? These Green River Formation type fish that look remarkably similar to animals that we still have today. I mean, other than ants, haven't there more insects than just ants been found in these supposed dinosaur rock layers?
Oh yeah, there's so many. It's like spiders have been found with dinosaurs, crickets, butterflies, bees, cockroaches, mites, mayflies, scorpion flies, millipedes, centipedes. It just goes on and on. There's just a plethora of them.
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what we would expect to find were all of the world's creatures buried together during some catastrophic event, kind of like a very large global deluge. But why do evolutionary scientists always rename the modern appearing insects found alongside dinosaurs with these different scientific genus and species names? I mean, are these creatures they're finding that different from anything alive today?
No, they look the same. Evolution scientists want to create the illusion of evolution, Dave, or change over time by giving the fossils a different genus and species name. But if you compare these modern animals side by side with the fossil animals found in the dinosaur rock layers, they look the same. After you compare these fossils, it's quite obvious that evolution did not occur, but extinction of the dinosaurs and pterodactyls did.
Yeah. Well, besides renaming fossils, are you finding that there are other ways that you've observed secular scientists trying to interpret data to fit inside of their evolutionary paradigm?
Oh, yeah. Evolution scientists are continually changing the nomenclature, the systems for dividing animals. They're continuously redating the sites so that the date fits according to their scheme. There's so much monkeying with the facts that really you could never disprove them because they're always fixing whatever they think doesn't work.
Yeah, not only fixing things that they don't work, but they're also patching their theories with this sort of magical duct tape. I love it that when they see the problem of, let's just say, living fossils, and they say, oh, well, we found a fossil in the record that is 300 million years old, 500 million years old, and you know what? It's remarkably similar to the same animal that is still crawling around today. Then they used this magical word stasis, where they said, well, you know what, Carl, it was so perfectly crafted 500 million years ago that it just didn't need to evolve any further, and it fit this ecological niche, so that's the reason that we don't see evolution in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different fossils. I mean, what are your thoughts on stasis?
Well, that's another piece of duct tape, as you say. But, you know, just empirically, the theory of evolution would say the lowest layer was hundreds and hundreds of millions of years ago, and that would be extinct, strange animals. But as you go up the layers, you would find more and more modern animals. But that's not what you find. You find modern animals in every layer, David, and it doesn't fit. And yeah, you could say stasis, this and that, but it's duct tape. They're just trying to take the evidence for creation and make it evidence for evolution. It's really funny.
Well, Carl, when you say that they're taking the evidence for creation, making it evidence for evolution, it's this thing that we don't understand when we say follow the science. Well, actually, science is that raw data. Right? Science doesn't lie. Science, you can always count on, but then the scientists come and they interpret the data based on where they're trying to lead or where they're trying to head with it. I mean, we actually see the same thing in some plants when it comes to living fossils, don't we?
Oh my gosh, it's surprising, but you know, the modern trees like sassafras trees and oak trees and chestnut trees, the list is very long, all lived alongside dinosaurs. So if you walked around, you would say, oh, this is just a normal forest that we have here in our state. But they, of course, changed the genus and species name, and they say, no, it's not the same plant, but it is. You look at the fossil leaf, it is the same plant.
Yeah, it really is. And so far, when you see everything that's been discovered mixed together in this big catastrophic event that buried everything so rapidly that it would actually produce a fossil, which is another clue to the catastrophism of this event, then all of a sudden we have to wonder why we have been so blind, or maybe even selectively blind, all along. Tell me, you've done so much research, Carl, on these topics. Do you know, is anyone continuing this research or expeditions searching for more examples of today's creatures in these strata layers?
Well, I would like to put this out there for all the young people in your audience. We need someone to go back and do another project like I did, but just look at the 400 species of mammals that have been found with dinosaurs. 402 species of mammals have been found with dinosaurs, but see, they don't put them out on display. You can't see them. But some young scientist needs to examine all 400 different types and see how many of those are modern mammals. And we have a lot of modern mammals living with the dinosaurs, like hedgehogs and possums and things like that. But I want to know how many more there are in that list of 400.
It sounds like a project for some of the young people, or maybe even some of the parents who see that their children or grandchildren are sort of nurturing this love of science. Well, let's direct them in the right way, and perhaps they can become the next Carl Werner. Maybe they can become the next famous scientist to discover how everything is pointing us right back here. Wrap it up with a bow in the last few seconds. How does the presence of these modern-looking creatures in ancient rock layers tell us that we can believe the Bible?
Well, actually, Dave, the layers of the Grand Canyon, all of the rock layers, are basically just 2 or 3 pages out of the Bible. And when it said that there was this worldwide flood, that is those 3 pages, and that is all those rock layers from the flood layer. So yeah, it matches the flood description and creation description just perfectly.
Absolutely. Carl, what is your website?
It's www.thegrandexperiment.com. And also I want to mention that there is a school curriculum for anybody who wants to do this with their kids. And you can do it, there's a teacher's manual, and teach them living fossils as a semester-long class.
School curriculum, The Grand Experiment. You have to check it out. Carl, thank you so much for being on the program and sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And now it's time for a quick break, but stick around because we have a lot more to cover right here on the Genesis Science Report. Hi, I'm David Rives, and I'm inviting you to visit the Creation Superstore, the largest origins-related store in the world. Not only will you find every book and video title on creation versus evolution, science, but also every resource that teaches us about our origin and how it all takes us back to Genesis, a grand designer, the God of the Bible, and ultimately, yes, the gospel message. Documentaries your family can trust, fossils, teaching videos, children's books, church Bible studies, homeschool supplements, and expert scientific literature. If you can't find a title, call us up and we'll add it. Normally, you'd have to visit dozens of sites to gain access to all of the titles that are out there, and then you would be at a loss to whether the book or video was worth the purchase. But not here. We've curated the best of the best into top 10 lists. And on some of my favorite products, you'll find the Rives rating, where I help guide you on the best resources available for not only those who love history, biblical studies, and creation science, but also great products at the layman level, easy to understand for those who are learning or want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to a biblical worldview. Just look for the Rives rating to find my personal favorites. Use the search bar to look up a topic or follow our menu to sort by ministry, subject, or author. Give us a call at 931-212-7990 as you're browsing. We have ministry volunteers who will do their best to assist you at all hours of the day and even help you place your order. Yes, a real person. Get ready for a secure shopping experience brought to you by the leaders of creation-based research. Your purchase goes towards ministry outreach and also supports the authors and organizations who publish the material, most of whom are personal friends and colleagues of mine. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. And welcome back to the show. It is time to dive into this week's Viewer Voices. Our first testimonial is from Sherry. She says, "Our family went to the Wonder Center Museum and thoroughly enjoyed it. We have a 4-year-old that loved the hands-on things. The animal exhibits are amazing. We love that it's based on the Bible. It was very clean. The associates were so very friendly and helpful. I think this is a must for everyone." Thank you so much, Sherry. We are always excited to see the response of people and also how amazing this is across generations, because age groups, it's turned out that this is really a cross-generational thing. There are kids' hands-on activities. There are things for preteens to do. There are things for teens to do. The adults love it. Couples love it. And then we're getting a lot of groups in as well. So thank you, Sherry. Our last submission is from Edward, who says, "I brought a tour group here just a couple of weeks after the facility opened. We were all mesmerized and wished that we had more time here. The exhibits are top-notch and show a wide variety of aspects of science. I also love how they give credit to God as the creator of all things. The gift shop was surprisingly large. The coffee shop was a welcome sight as we entered. I live an hour away from this place, but I will be going back." Well, Edward, we look forward to seeing you back at the Wonder Center and Science Museum in the near future. If you have a story or if you want to share anything, we would love to hear from you. So connect with us on social media and email us at comments@genesissciencenetwork.com. Now, let's take a look at Sir William Herschel's discoveries in astronomy to see how they reveal not only the vastness of creation, but also the divine truths reflected in the heavens on this week's Genesis Science Minute. Sir William Herschel was a prominent astronomer of the late 18th and early 19th century. His discovery of Uranus in 1781 brought the number of known planets in our solar system to 7. A brilliant scientist of his day, Herschel was known as the King's Astronomer. Knighted in 1816, holding the record for the largest telescope for nearly 50 years. His son, John Herschel, became a prominent astronomer in his own right. Making detailed observations of Halley's Comet, he became one of the pioneers of astrophotography, taking pictures of the heavens. He's said to have stated that all human discoveries seem to be made only for the purpose of confirming more strongly that truths come from on high and are contained in the sacred writings. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
For more information, visit David Rives Ministries at davidrives.com, davidrives.com.
In this week's ministry update, I want to reflect on some of the ways that the Holy Spirit has been active in the growth of our ministry. Over the past few months, we have been blessed with an influx of tour bus groups visiting the museum, offering us a special opportunity to share the wonders of God's creation with people from across the country. We've also had the joy of partnering with local churches and homeschool groups to host various events. Now, one highlight was our recent Homeschool Day with Michael Mahon, where families enjoyed live animal demonstrations and interactive exhibits. I actually had an owl on my arm. It's always inspiring to see children and parents alike engage with God's creation in such a fun and hands-on way. You know, our monthly Unwrapped events have also become an integral part of our mission, featuring incredible speakers who have shared valuable insights into creation science. If you couldn't make it last month, don't worry. We're looking forward to welcoming NASA engineer Mike Houts on December 12th for another engaging discussion that you will not want to miss. Now, as we continue this important work, we invite you to consider becoming a monthly donor. Your tax-deductible contributions are vital for helping us share the wonders of creation and deliver uplifting messages of hope and of faith. To join this mission, please visit our website or contact us at 931-212-7990. And make sure to stay informed about all of our upcoming initiatives by subscribing to our free bi-monthly magazine and email updates. Now, it's time to shift our attention to an interesting biological phenomenon coined Darwin's finches. We'll explore how these birds' diversity highlights not evolution, but the incredible design of God's creation on this week's Heavens Declare. Let's take a look right now.
Every biology student has heard of Darwin's finches. Now, this term refers to a variety of finch species that inhabits the beautiful Galapagos Islands of the Pacific. You see, the story goes something like this. You see, Charles Darwin, when he was sailing on the HMS Beagle, observed a variety of finch types on these islands. Now, some had big beaks, some had little beaks, and some had in-between beaks. Darwin speculated that these small changes within a population would someday lead to big changes as one kind of a creature turned into an entirely different kind of creature. But is that what these little perching birds show? What we observe on the Galapagos is variety within finches. Darwin interpreted this as a result of slow and gradual evolution from a common ancestor. But that's not actually observation. That's an interpretation of the evidence starting from the perspective that life arose naturalistically. Now, we could interpret this exact same evidence a different way, starting with the history of God's Word. You see, Genesis tells us that God created every organism to reproduce according to its kind. Now, we could use this information to build scientific models. So, if each animal is created to reproduce according to their kinds, well, then it makes logical sense that organisms probably belong to the same kind if they can successfully reproduce. And the finches on the Galapagos Islands, well, they can reproduce. So if these finches can reproduce, well, then they must belong to the exact same kind. And we see this with a variety of organisms. Zebras and horses produce zorses. Lions and tigers produce ligers. Polar bears, grizzly bears produce growler bears, and we could go on. You see, species can interbreed as long as they belong to the same created kind. Now, God created tremendous amount of genetic variability into the creatures that He made so that you could have big beaks, little beaks, or in-between beaks. This allows them to adapt to an ever-changing world, improving their chances of survival. And we have a God who cares about details enough to make sure that this can happen. Darwin's finches don't really show evolution from one kind of creature into another. They show the variability within a kind. In other words, Darwin's observation of finches actually is a reminder of biblical accuracy. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
Up next, we are continuing our discussion on paleontology as we analyze another significant discovery, this time of bat fossils in Wyoming. John Mackay from Creation Research will be joining us shortly to share his insights, but first, let's pause for a quick commercial break. We know that you want to have a deep faith in the Lord and to witness to those around you. To do that, you need tools and information to strengthen your faith using scientific discoveries that prove the Bible to be true. The problem is that atheists using evolutionary theories claim that they've refuted the Bible's accuracy. What's worse, the real facts are censored. If you don't have a PhD in science, you're often left feeling helpless when trying to defend your faith. But you need to be equipped to know the truth. For that reason, over the past 13 years, we've become the most trusted name in biblical scientific research, interfacing with nearly every top Christian organization in existence to distill and give you the true facts as they support your faith in Christ. Sign up for our weekly emails and free bi-monthly magazine. Consider becoming a partner with us as we reach the world with the truth of the Bible and the gospel message. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Squids in limestone in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
But the big problem is, how did those fossils get deposited in the middle of a 7-foot thick layer? According to the narrative, is something like 36 million years in duration. I'm replacing the narrative with some type of rapid smothering event.
On Wonders Without Number. And it's time to get into our next conversation, exploring a recent paleontological discovery that's generating buzz in scientific circles. Researchers have unearthed remarkably well-preserved bat fossils in Wyoming's Green River Formation, stirring up debate about what the fossil record tells us about the history and the diversity of life on Earth. To help us understand the significance of these findings, we're joined by John Mackay, Director of Creation Research and founder of the Jurassic Ark Museum in Australia. With a background in geology and genetics from Queensland University, John has debated leading evolutionists, you would recognize their name, worldwide, and authored numerous books on creation science. John, welcome to the program.
G'day, Dave. It's really good to see you again, and I haven't yet recovered from flying with you and snakes to Carolina.
You know, literally, that we were just talking about it before you came on during the commercial break. A memory popped up in my phone today of you and I in a small private plane with snakes on the plane, headed to South Carolina to speak at some events, and I was like, wow, does my iPhone know that I'm actually going to be talking to John today? Listen, I miss seeing your face in person. I tell you, it has been such a long time, so we need to get together sometime soon. Summarize this new report for our viewing audience. What did they find? I see researchers are discovering supposed 52 million year old bat fossils. What does that mean?
Okay, well, the Green River is famous for its number of bat fossils. So far, I believe there's around about 48, 50 specimens. 52 is the latest count that I've been told. And the interesting thing, and I've hammered it over and over again in debates, and it's a real winner, whether it's against Richard Dawkins or the professors at Oxford or whatever. If you want to understand the history of bats, that it's easy. The first fossil bat in their time scale, even though they've got millions of years, is easy to recognize. It looks like a dead, well-preserved bat. There's no doubt about it. If I was to take a bat today and skin it and just put the bones there and soak and remove all the flesh, it would roughly look like that. So bat species, bat kind, bat genus have shown no evidence, no support of evolution at all. And as you can see, Dave, in that picture there, every bone is in place.
Yeah.
So that bat didn't sort of fall out of the sky, hit somebody on the head, knock itself out, drop into the river, and be covered up slowly until it fell apart before its bones were buried. So when you're looking at the Green River, all of them are like that. And in fact, I'll throw in something from New Zealand where I don't think you've been. They've reported a giant burrowing bat fossil found, but it was found also with reptiles like crocodiles and alligators, right? And fishes and snakes. Now, the Kiwis are petrified of our snakes getting back to New Zealand, but they don't like admitting they were already there. And the same is true in Green River. The fossil combination in Green River talks about catastrophe, rapid burial, washing in from multiple environments, flood-type deposition.
Well, that's incredibly informational, because what we find is when we look at, there are no snakes in New Zealand, right?
Not living today, no.
Not living today.
A few have washed up on the west coast.
And the interesting thing is the same thing for like hummingbirds. You guys don't have hummingbirds. Europe doesn't have hummingbirds. Only the Americas have hummingbirds. But guess what? We find hummingbirds fossilized in other places other than the Americas, meaning that everything got off of Noah's Ark at some point. It's just they thrived in different areas, and some other areas they went extinct. Can you kind of elaborate?
I'll throw in one more thing for you, Dave, there about New Zealand, because they have the world's only kiwis. You know, the funny little birds with the long beaks and no flight ability. But we are the only country, Australia, down under, that has fossil kiwis. So the point you made about hummingbirds, about even the Roadrunner. Remember the Roadrunner program? Roadrunner's very real, not just with Bugs Bunny, and he lives only in America, not in Australia or anywhere else. And that's a pattern which only makes sense if animals got off the ark, if birds got off the ark, and they moved independently to wherever it suited them.
Absolutely. I mean, John, that's a legitimate point that a lot of people are not considering because of these secular ideas that have crept into geology, that have crept into paleontology. Kind of elaborate for a moment on the unique geological and environmental factors that contributed to how well preserved everything is in the Green River Formation, whether it's the Priscacara that's kind of like our sunfish, or whether it's whatever it is. You find these things, you split open a rock, and there's not even usually evidence that it's been scavenged. It's not evidence that it's been sitting there falling apart for a long time.
Well, I've got hundreds and hundreds of fossils from the Green River, and I haven't got any that show any evidence of sitting around waiting to be slowly buried. And the point that you make and I make it to the rabid evolutionists, is usually sadly ignored. They want to think of fossils as living, dying, slowly falling to the bottom, and waiting there to be fossilized. Now, Joseph Hubbard, who you know very well, who, by the way, you mightn't have heard it, he's now been appointed to the London Geological Society. Now, that's something that the evolutionists will really get in their craw. So praise the Lord for that. Amen. Because he's an eminent young geologist now and doing really well. But he and I were visiting a fish farm here in Australia. and we were talking about the preservation of fossil fishes, and I showed him some of my Green River ones, and he said, well, we know that they fall to the bottom sometimes. So when it's cold weather and when the air bladder's not really puffed up or anything, they can actually sink. But he said they don't last long because we've discovered that if we leave them on the bottom, within a day or so, there's a fungus in the water that comes and it covers up all the fishes. And very shortly after that, the fungus literally tears the fish body apart. So even if you get them sinking, they will not stay there long enough to be buried. So rapid deposition, flood burial on a more small scale or big scale is the only explanation that's any use to a fossil hunter at all.
Yeah, there's no secular way to get the long ages of slow preservation to work. Something that you said many years ago that it's always stuck. It's not time, it's process.
That's correct. And folks who bought my Tights and Mites and Fossil Fights would have heard that phrase over and over again. As you said at the start, we run Jurassic Ark. We bring schools there to show them our fossils that we found on site and our little mini museum with rapidly buried fossils, whether it's dinosaurs with, there's one dinosaur bed I've been to where the dinosaur footprint's there and you've got fish that dinosaur has stood on. Right, so not only has the footprint been buried, so has the fish, and then it was covered up. So you've got rapidity, not time. So therefore, it's process, not time. That's the issue with fossils. And all of you who are listening out there, think it through for yourself. Don't be blindsided by the evolutionary theory and their PhDs and all of that. It simply proves that they go with the mob. Now, don't go with the mob. Go with the fact that the guy who invented even the word genus borrowed it from the Bible. Have a look at Genesis in Latin. It uses God made their own kind, genus in Latin. Borrowed into the university system, now genus and species, creation-based. So when you look at the classification, you mentioned some of them from the Green River before. Well-known names, usually two, one big one, genus, one species, invented by Christian creationists because the evidence matches the Bible. God created fishes, God created bats, God created all things to produce their own kind, and the ones that have just been found at Green River, they are immaculate, right? Oh, yeah. You couldn't say that's anything but a bat. You couldn't say it's a half a bat. You couldn't say it's well, Darwin thought squirrels evolved wings and turned into bats, and that's just batty. It's stupid. There's not the slightest evidence that actually backs that up at all. So you Christians out there, don't be afraid of standing your ground because the truth is solid and it is what God's word says.
Absolutely it is. And everything we're finding is consistent with God's word. So stand your ground and wait for science to fully catch up because eventually it will be made clear. You mentioned even the scientific terminology for different types of animals goes back to either biblical things, if it's Greek or if it's Latin or whatever, it's pretty common. Like if you understand the language, you actually understand that it's describing the characteristics of these creatures. But when we talk about the characteristics of creatures, some paleontologists are saying, well, these new bats are part of a completely different species. We know that there are tiny adaptations within an animal kind, obviously. But what about this whole idea of classifying them as a different species?
Okay, it's a trick played on people. So when you look at Darwin, he trained in theology, right? He was going to be an Anglican clergyman. He'd already failed at medicine. His dad wanted him with a good income. Being a pastor in a church was a good income. Charles Darwin trained at that, but turned his back on God, on the Bible, but he knew one thing. The Bible spoke about the origin of genus, not the origin of species. So his name for his book was deliberate, Origin of Species. Yeah. Read it all. I'd encourage you read it all because he talks about how brown cows turn into white cows, how fat cows turn into skinny cows, etc. And not one example of where the kind comes from. So it's a big bluff. And in fact, I'd encourage you, go the other half and say, well, if I've got a bat as beautifully preserved as the supposed first one in the Green River Formation, what do you need to make a bat? Because Darwin says, give me a mouse, give me a squirrel, let it flap, and it will turn into a bat. But the reality is, some of the experiments I saw at Queensland University were amazing. As they illustrated the abilities of echo sounding and all of this sort of thing, they would set up a fan, right? And it would be the only way out of the building. You know, it would be a hole in the wall with a fan in it, and the bat would fly at that to get out. But as you turned the fan on, the bat would have to calculate how fast the fan was going, and it would have to therefore know, because it uses echolocation, how fast the speed of sound is. So this speed of sound had to be built into the bat before it even tackled the fan. And if you turned the fan too high, the bat would go, whoa, right? And back, it wouldn't go through. It knew how fast it could get through that gap and the increasing speed. So in its mind, it's calculating the speed of sound, it's calculating the reflected rate, it's therefore calculating the velocity, and it's calculating the space left between the two blades of the fan.
Incredible.
Now, you can't be a bat unless you've got that. Now, Dave, you won't make a good bat. You might make a good passenger with a punch of snakes going to South Carolina, but you'll never make a good bat. And in reality, this shows up, like Dr. Diane Eager, who works with Creation Research in Australia. She and I were talking yesterday about what we do in this program, and we came across a reference to baby bats practicing. Right, so they practice with their sound even before they take off, right? And in order for them to know that, they don't practice the speed of sound, or else they fall out of the sky and on the head end of bats. But in reality, they practice, and the most important part of their practice is the landing speed. You know, like you come in on an aeroplane, these days it's a lot of computer control, because they built into the computer the speed at which it's sinking, the landing rate, how fast you've got to be, what the brakes have got to be set. It's got to all be built in. The evidence and design, whether it's this fossil bat or all the bats on the planet, is just evidence of how much a genius God is. Because I'll be honest, I can run at a moving fan, but I don't even think of what the speed of sound is. I think it would chop me up.
Incredible ingenuity points to incredible design, and incredible design points to an amazing designer. John, we're completely out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being on the program today. And I hope to not only have you back in the future, but also at some point have you in studio in the Wonder Center here in the States. Thank you for what you do.
God bless, mate.
God bless you. And that's it for today. I want to thank you for joining us on the Genesis Science Report. Until next week, keep looking up. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.